Why doesn't the online survey on the Alberta pension plan give a very simple question? Number one option, do you want this or not? Why not start there?
Well, that's what the referendum question would be if we move to that. We're in the phase of trying to tell people what the plan would look like. And so the first stage was doing the LifeMark report and getting the number, getting an actuary to do the analysis. They did. They said that by 2027, we'd be entitled to $334 billion. And if all of that went into savings for contributions, it would reduce it by $14.25 for each employee, $14.25 for each employer. And if it went to increase benefits, it could be also substantial increase in benefits for our seniors. So we wanted people to understand just how much Alberta is entitled to, what our overpayments have been, what our contribution value would be, so that we could start the conversation.
But some of the numbers are really specific, and then some of them are really vague. I appreciate your finance minister coming on the show, but he goes, we believe we're entitled to somewhere between this and this, and it's a discrepancy of like $100 billion, which is a really big deal. I'm sure you saw Jason Markusoff's piece, or I don't know if you read his stuff or not, but he basically says that the APP plan doesn't factor in buffers, cushions, or risks. A lot of people feel like they're not getting the information they need to make an informed decision, but they're trying to fill out this survey in good faith. Let me put this in the words of a couple real talkers. Manish says, why have you chosen, Premier, to use government resources to present information from only one, the most optimistic source, when it comes to how much Alberta could take from the CPP? Why have you chosen to not include further information like opposition from other provinces, the feds that dispute the rosy figures that Albertans are being bombarded with using our own tax dollars? Why not give Albertans all the information?
Well, the researchers stand by their calculation. The formula is in the CPP Act. And so we have asked Chrystia Freeland to give us, if she thinks that our number and our calculation is incorrect, to give us what she thinks is the correct calculation. Trevor Toome, respect his work, but he's not an actuary. So he's given some, I think, estimate of what he thinks we're entitled to. That's not what I need. What I need is an actual number. If we're going to be putting it to Albertans about whether or not they want their own plan, we need to know what the actual number is. So we put it to Chrystia Freeland to give that to us. The finance ministers are meeting on Friday. We'll tell them that is our intention as well. We need to know. If the Act allows for a province to be able to leave, there has to be a pathway to leave, and they have to do this kind of work so that we can have an assessment of that. And if we get those numbers, then we'll be able to have it put to the people before we would ever consider.
Is that a predetermined outcome? Like, is this? You kind of get the vibe. I don't know if Minister Scow kind of had a bit of a slip up the other day or not from the podium, but basically made it sound like it is going to a referendum.
No, we are putting forward legislation this fall that confirms a couple of things. Number one, we would only pull out of the CPP if all of the assets were transferred to an APP, so can't be used for anything else. Contributions would have to be lower or the same. Benefits would have to be higher or the same, and it would have to be put to a referendum. So that's all we're doing, is we're codifying in law that if there was any decision, it would have to go to a referendum, and it would have to meet those three criteria.
People like numbers. People like, people like 50% plus one or 2/3 or something like that. How strong does the mandate have to be? How strong does the feedback have to be from Albertans? What tangible number can you give us to understand what would shape your decision on whether or not to spend, I don't know, $30, $40, $50 million on a referendum on this?
Well, I guess we'd have to, I do want to get all of the input from all sources. So I think we've had 70,000 people so far participate in our survey. We're doing polling. We have the consultations that Jim Dinning is doing. He's done 2 already. He's got 3 more to go. I think he's getting 10 to 12,000 people on each of those calls. We're getting emails and texts into our MLA offices. So with all of that information, we'll be able to get a sense of whether or not Albertans want us to shelve it or whether they want to go forward and have a vote on it.
Are you a fan of Margaret Thatcher?
I am.
Okay, Norm says, when I was a young fella, I heard the Iron Lady say that ruling by referendum was the tool of dictators and demigods. He says, I never thought much about it then, but Premier Smith has prompted my memory of this quote. The government controls the narrative, controls the question, and ultimately will only go ahead if they feel like they can control the answer. He says, with an issue this important, there needs to be an election. I suspect you're not going to trigger an election. He says, but let her campaign on this issue, because it didn't come up during the campaign.
It came up a lot.
But you told people that you were going to touch their pensions.
No, I told them I was going to release the report, and if we went to, if there was a decision on it at all, it would be by a referendum, which is what the original panel asked us to do. They asked, this is the thing, we did a consultation with a Fair Deal panel, 350,000 people participated in that, and the advice was, do the work, find out what it would look like to have our own pension pension plan. But if you make any changes, put it to the people. It's got to be the people who decide. So I'm just following the direction that Albertans gave us in the original mandate.
Norm says, if Premier thinks this is such a good idea, let her risk something on it. If I was going to reply to Norm personally, I would say she's risking a lot on it. I'm sure it's not lost on you. Like, political success, political survival, something like this. This is about as high profile as it gets. That's not lost on you, I'm sure.
This is why it does need to be put to a referendum. And look, we have a history of this. Rachel Notley put the issue of the Olympics to a referendum in Calgary because it wasn't clear whether Calgarians wanted it or not, and ultimately they rejected it, and they stood by the will of the people. So referendum is a tool that is not partisan, but it is sometimes when you've got these really difficult issues that you want to make sure that they're fully vetted, that you've got people doing the full public debate. The best way to do it is to go to a referendum. So I disagree with Norm.